What is up, everybody? How are you doing today? Welcome into the Fantasy Tap. My name is Michael, and if you've never joined us before, we are a fantasy football podcast, and we are right now in the middle of our round-by-round breakdowns. So John just released round one, and I am about to give you guys round two. But before we jump into that, if you could do us a huge favor, like this video and hit the subscribe button. Also, there's a little bell in the top right or bottom right corner. If you could click that, that'd be great. That way you get notified every time we drop a video. And we're doing about 17 rounds. We might even go all the way to 20, but at least 17. So it's going to be a lot of information out there for you guys. Also, join our Discord. We have a ton of fun in there. We talk gambling. We're trying to help people find leagues, things like that. That link will be in the description. But first, if you haven't, before we jump into the round two breakdown, if you haven't watched John's round one breakdown, go watch that now. Unless you know what you're doing in round one. If you're drafting 1-1, you're taking CMC. Anyways, check that video out. But let's jump into it now. Round two breakdowns. All right. We've got 12 guys. We're going in order of ADP. And the first guy going at pick 13, ADP of 12.8, it's Aaron Jones. He finished last year as a running back 5 and the year prior to that as the running back 2. Now, obviously, we all know Aaron Rodgers is back. So that is a good thing for Aaron Jones. I was a little hesitant when the news broke that Aaron Rodgers was potentially not coming back. At the end of the day, I'm glad he is. But also, they lost Jamal Williams. Now, they did coexist a little bit, but there were games that Jamal would go off and Aaron Jones would kind of just not sit there, but not get the opportunities. Right now, the only other guy there is AJ Dillon, who could take a step forward and take that Jamal Williams role, but I don't really see it. One of the biggest things coming into last year, and one reason why he was not an awful lot of people's boards last year, but not as high as he should have been, was his 2019 touchdowns. He had 19. He had 16 rushing touchdowns, 3 receiving touchdowns, and as expected, he regressed in that category, regressing to still a great number, 11 total, 9 rushing, 2 receiving. What that tells me is he's going to get his touchdowns. He's going to get into that double-digit touchdowns. He's also an extremely efficient runner. In 2019, that was his lowest yards per carry. It was 4.59 yards per carry. Outside of that, every other year, he's averaged over 5 yards a carry, including last year at 5.49. So an extremely efficient runner. Love to see that. And another thing is he had over 45 receptions, and over 63 targets the last 2 years. I think we see that streak continue. So I love Aaron Jones here. Also, they showed a sign of good faith to him that they're going to use him by re-signing him to a 4-year, $48 million contract, which if you read through it, it's more of a 2-year, $20 million, but still they re-signed him for the next 2 years. Love to see that. Now, I said that he's going to still be a part of that passing game and get those receptions. My only concern with him is they did bring in Randall Cobb as well as drafted Amari Rodgers. So that might take a couple away from him. But overall, I think that he's still going to see his fair share of targets. And I am so comfortable with him here at the turn at ADP of 12.8. If I decide to go, wide receiver, say if I'm near the turn and I decide to go wide receiver, maybe I can grab Stephon Diggs at pick 12 and pair him up with Aaron Jones at pick 13. I love that. I'm comfortable with having Aaron Jones as my running back 1. Also, if I can pair him up with another stud running back and stack my running backs with Aaron Jones and another high-end running back going in the first round, that's like picture perfect to me. He also gives you the chance to grab, go tight end if Kelsey falls. So love Aaron Jones, where he's going at. He opens up that first round for you, you know, especially if you're drafting there on the turn. If you're later in the middle of the second round, you're kind of in no man's land. You might get him, might not. But if you're on that turn, I love Aaron Jones. Let's move on. Going at 14.5, Nick Chubb, 14th overall, finished last year as the running back 9 and finished 2019 as a running back 7. And just so you guys know, this is all half-point PPR. He's not a guy that's going to win you your league, but he's going to get the touches. He's going to run the ball, and he's going to be a consistent fantasy player. Even with Kareem Hunt there, they can coexist. He's not going to have much pass catching work because of Kareem Hunt. He's probably the best, or one of the best, top 2, top 3 pure rushers in the NFL. So that's why I say he's not going to win you your league, but he is going to be a solid, consistent running back. Another guy I would love to have as my running back too. But he will give you that consistency. So I would also feel comfortable with Nick Chubb as my number 1 running back. All right, let's jump into our first receiver, and that is Calvin Ridley, going at ADP of 15. Next guy on the board. He did say going into training camp that he does feel 100% after having that minor foot procedure in the offseason. So that's a good thing. Obviously, we know there's coaching changes in Atlanta, as well as Julio Jones is not there anymore, but they did draft Kyle Pitts. He finished last year as the wide receiver 4 on 143 targets, caught 90 of those, over almost 1,400 yards and 9 touchdowns. And he only had 3. This stat blows my mind. He only had 3 weeks where he finished outside of the top 24 wide receivers. That's consistency. Thing I love about Calvin Ridley is he gives you consistency, but he also can have those boom games. He did kill a couple people, or hurt a lot of people when he did go post a goose egg. But he was coming off an injury, or was injured, questionable going into the game. That sucked. But, hey, I'll take that. I will take that if my guy can stay in the top 24 wide receivers pretty much the entire year. He provides like I said, he provides upside with the stability. However, he did have, and this is what concerns me just slightly, because there wasn't a lot of Julio Jones there last year. But he had 7 red zone touchdowns, as well as 26 red zone targets, which is 3rd most in the league. And with the addition of Kyle Pitts, I think we could see his red zone targets decrease just a bit, not enough to drop him out of, top 5 wide receiver. I have him as my 4th wide receiver, to be completely honest. Actually, yes, I have him as my 4th wide receiver this year. There's only one guy behind him that I would take over Ridley, and that's DeAndre Hopkins. I'm hot on DeAndre Hopkins next year, and we'll talk about him a little bit later. But Calvin Ridley gives you stability, gives you the upside. Matt Ryan's throwing the ball. I feel comfortable. If you want to stack up a running back and a wide receiver, or even you want to try that late round running back strategy, this is one of the guys you need to target as your wide receiver. Now, I said DeAndre Hopkins is the only guy I would take over Calvin Ridley. And let me get into why. Last year, finished as the wide receiver 5. Talk about consistency. The last time DeAndre Hopkins finished outside of the top 5 wide receivers was 2016. That's nuts. He also had 160 targets last year from Kyler Murray. And even with the addition of AJ Green, I think he eclipses 150. He only had this is the killer. This is why he didn't jump up a couple spots. He only had 6 touchdowns last year. And I know that Kyler Murray's rushing ability and his 15 rushing touchdowns has something to do with that. However, I think that we see DeAndre Hopkins get closer to that double-digit range, 9, maybe 10 range. So sorry about that. So I do like DeAndre Hopkins to have more touchdowns this year. I do think that they're going to throw the ball a little bit more to him, especially in the red zone. Kyler Murray and that offense has even come out and said that they want to throw the ball a little bit more, not have to rely on Kyler Murray's rushing ability. So I think DeAndre Hopkins, I have him right now finishing as my wide receiver 3. He's finished top 5 since 2016. So a great, safe play here, no matter the quarterback. I love DeAndre Hopkins. Moving on to our next guy, and that is Antonio Gibson, currently going as ADP of 17. Last year, he snuck into the top 12 running backs, finishes RB 12. At the end of the day, I'll just give you what I think about him. I think he has a good amount of upside, but I think you're drafting him near or at that upside, that ceiling. I think it's going to be very difficult for him to get back into that top 12. He might finish as the, RB 10. I think that's a ceiling. I really do. If you want to take him as your running back 2, for that upside that he does have, then go for it. But I'm not relying on Antonio Gibson as my running back 1. And to be honest, there's 2 other better options later on in this round that I would prefer to go for that same or higher upside. And that's CEH and Joe Mixon. Those 2 guys are in better offenses, and they have a much higher ceiling than Antonio Gibson. So at the end of the day, I'm really not taking a shot on. I won't be taking a shot on Antonio Gibson in many of my leagues, unless he falls to me in like the 3rd round. At that point, I'd feel comfortable taking him, but not right here, not at RB 12, where I think that's close to his ceiling. Moving on, one guy I just mentioned, it's Joe Mixon, going right after Antonio Gibson. One reason why I mentioned him, current ADP of 18.6. That's why he's our next guy. Last year, obviously disappointing year. He finished as the running back 49, only played in 6 games. It hurt a lot of people because it was his ankle. Is he coming back? Is he not coming back? You start him, you don't start him. Do you drop him? You don't drop him. It hurt. It hurt a lot of people, but we've got, as fantasy football players, we've got to learn to let stuff like that go. This guy's only missed, prior to last season, only missed 4 games in 3 seasons. So his health really doesn't concern me. I think they saw that their offensive line was not very good. They weren't going to make the playoffs, so they didn't really need him. So that's kind of why they shut him down. Now, I do think the offensive line takes a step forward between the draft and getting guys back healthy. Also, Joe Burrow coming off that injury, I think is going to give Joe Mixon a little bit more pass catching upside. Now, I know they drafted Jamar Chase, and they have a ton of pass catching weapons in that offense. But I do think that getting the ball out quickly, dumping it off to Joe Mixon and letting him do what he can is something that Joe is going to rely on. He's capable, and we've seen it before. He's capable of carrying the ball over 250 times. Plus, no more Gio Bernard in that offense. Like I said, I think his pass catching, he sees a very high increase in his pass catching. Another guy I'm not very comfortable with taking as my running back 1. At this point in the 2nd round, you might be able to stack a Zeke Elliott or Jonathan Taylor and then Joe Mixon. I mean, that's the reality of it, and that's where I feel comfortable with him. I would rather have a couple receivers just ahead of him than I would Joe Mixon. But if I'm going RB heavy and I can grab Joe Mixon as my running back 2 with that tremendous upside he has, I'm all for it. Moving on, DK Metcalf, a lot of hype around him, currently going ADP of 19.9. Finished last year as a wide receiver 7. He's currently going off as the wide receiver 6. And it kind of worries me. He's being drafted near his ceiling. I think that DK is a tremendous player. And obviously, the offensive coordinator moved there in Seattle. They want more balance. But we all saw it in the back half of the year. The Seahawks passing game just kind of took a nosedive pretty much. He finished outside of the top 24 wide receivers 8 times last year, over half, or right at half of the games. And I think he has those boom games, great upside potential, but can let you down in key points. And another thing is he plays the Rams and the Niners 4 times combined. They're in his division. And that doesn't give me the warm and fuzzies. He did put up a solid game against the 49ers last year, but we all know that they were injured quite badly last year, their entire defense. To be honest, I'm not taking DK Metcalf here. There's a couple other receivers behind him that I think have more stability, as well as that upside potential. So DK Metcalf right now is not going to do it for me. I don't want to take him at his ceiling. I have him finishing as a wide receiver 7. So right where he is. And I want a little bit more value, to be honest. And like I said, a couple guys behind him, I'm a little bit more intrigued by. Moving on to somebody who's probably one of the most questioned guys. His ADP has risen. He was going in the 3rd round earlier before more drafts and more hype in training camp. And that's Najee Harris, 20.9 ADP. Coming off the board is running back 13. Now, this is an extremely talented back. He can catch the ball. He's a powerful runner. He has the agility to put his foot in the ground and hit the open hole. But the biggest question mark surrounding Najee Harris is not him. It's his offensive line, and can they pull it together? They lost 3 starters last year: Mike Pouncey, David DeCastro, and Andre Villanueva. Those are 3 anchors of that offensive line. At the end of the day, I'm not taking Najee in the 2nd round. I know there's upside there, but I also think he could finish at the bottom of the running backs, top 24 running backs. He can finish around that 20 spot. His range is so wide that I don't want that. I'd prefer to have, Joe Mixon. I'd prefer to have Clyde Edwards, so you can grab a couple spots later. So, and I know John, if you talk to John, he's not going to agree with me. This is my perspective. We'll have to do a Najee Harris segment or something like that, because like I said, he is one of the most questioned or talked about guys. So to get his perspective, but right now in the 2nd round, I'm off Najee. If I can get him in the 3rd though, I'd love that. Darren Waller is our next guy. He's currently the tight end 2, ADP of 21.3, and I love it. I have him as my tight end 2 this year. He had over 100 receptions, and I think he does that again. He is clearly their go-to guy, especially in the red zone. Last year, he had the 2nd most targets in the red zone at 27, and he had 6 red zone touchdowns. One crazy stat that I like, his catch rate was 73.3%. That was 9th in the league, but his true catch rate, catchable balls, was 91.5% last year, which is crazy. 7th in the league. I love it. It's Derek Carr's safety blanket. And with the hiccups that Henry Ruggs and Bryan Edwards have had, I think Darren Waller is going to be their safety blanket again. I do think that one of those guys, I'm leaning more Henry Ruggs, will have a better year, a more consistent year. But I don't see that eating into Darren Waller at all. If anything, I see it helping him, especially if Ruggs can spread down, go down the field more, and give Waller a little bit more space. So I love Darren Waller here. If you're going to tight end early, he's one of the guys. He is the guy I'm targeting, to be honest. I've seen him fall back into that 3rd round. If I can grab him as my 3rd pick, I'm all over that all day. Don't let him slip. All right, moving on. AJ Brown, wide receiver 7, ADP of 21.5. The next guy on our list, he finished last year as the wide receiver 10, but he finished as a wide receiver 6 in points per game, 12.2. He had a top 12 receiver finish 6 times last year in 14 games. And he had 6 or more targets in every game except one. That one, he only had 4. So, and we saw more of a 7 or 8 was more his consistent range. So I love that. Give me his targets. They lost Jonnu. They lost Corey Davis. Obviously, the addition of Julio Jones, he did come back. I would rather take Julio in the next round because I think he has the same amount of upside or similar upside to AJ Brown. I think that there is, a strong possibility that Julio could be that team's wide receiver 1 and AJ Brown takes a step back into that wide receiver 2. At the end of the day, they're both going to get targets. But sitting here at wide receiver 7, I think you're drafting him at his ceiling, even with Julio there and all. So I'm taking Justin Jefferson, who's a couple spots later, over AJ Brown right now. Plus they run the ball, a ton. I'm taking Justin over AJ Brown. However, that's the only other guy here. I think this is like the cutoff for the tiers of upside and consistency. So if Justin Jefferson's gone and you do want to, draft a wide receiver here, AJ Brown is fine take. I'm just shooting for Jefferson before. So last two, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Last year he finished as the running back 22. And he burned a lot of people. He was going as a top 5 running back. The closer and closer we got to the drafts. And that hurt a lot of people. That left a bad taste in the mouth. And to be honest, I think that's why he's going here at running back 15 at the end of the second round, ADP of 22.4. He doesn't have any veteran there to really split the carries with. I don't foresee anybody there, at least Darrell Williams or anybody like that, Jerick McKinnon. I don't see those guys taking much of his workload. Obviously, biggest concern, we saw it last year, especially at the beginning of the season, and probably the reason they brought in Le'Veon Bell is to be that goal line guy. He was not very efficient at on the goal line. We saw it stuff after stuff after stuff. However, he gets his bread in the pass catching. He only saw 55 targets last year, and I think with him as the true lead back, we'll see that number jump up to 75, 80 range. And he also only had 5 touchdowns, and I think we see that get closer to those double-digit numbers. I'd love taking CEH here at running back 14, especially if he is my running back 2, because he's truly one of the last guys you can take that has true top 5 running back upside. And I know you think I might be a little crazy, but he didn't all of a sudden lose his talent. I know he burnt people last year, but everybody, including myself, was all over him last year because he has that top 5 upside talent. He didn't lose it. He's still in the same offense. They've talked about getting the ball to him more in the passing game. I love that. So CEH here at running back 2 at the end of the second round. Oh, man, I would if you can think about this, he's going in a spot where you could almost, if not definitely, stack a Kamara, Henry, Cook, or a CMC with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. One of those or two, if you grab one of those 4 guys and grab CEH, you have a very good shot of having 2 top 5 running backs, and at minimum 2 top 12 running backs. That's why I love him so much. You can pair him up with CMC pretty much, which is unfair. That will be unfair this year. And finally, Justin Jefferson last year finished as the wide receiver 6, and he only had 7 touchdowns last year. Guy on the other side, Adam Thielen, had 14, and I think we see I know we see less touchdowns for Adam Thielen this year. He's not getting 14 touchdowns. I think that's going to benefit Justin Jefferson. This is the year that we see Justin Jefferson get into that 11 touchdown range. I have him at as wide receiver 6 overall, and honestly, his ceiling is top 4, top 2 potentially. but definitely top 4. I love him here. And I see him. He had 125 targets last year. I don't see him going anywhere. I don't see him going below that, even with Dalvin Cook running the ball as much as he does. I love Justin Jefferson. I think we see a huge, or not huge, because it's difficult to take a huge step forward off of that performance. But I think we see him take a step forward again. And this guy is a great pick at wide receiver 8. And at the end of the first round, you could do damage if he's your wide receiver 1, and you can grab whoever you want. See, if you're at the turn and it's 3.1 and Justin Jefferson's there, you just grab CEH and you have CMC already. Just tell him to give you the trophy. Tell him to give you the trophy already. So, man. But anyways, ladies and gents, that is it. That is our round 2 breakdown. If you could do us a favor, comment what you thought. Also, hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell, hit the like button. And if you're listening to us on the podcast, please rate. That'd be great. Rate is great. And review us. We'd really appreciate it. And like I said, let us know what you want to hear. Also, don't forget, join the Discord. We love you guys. Have a great day. Mwah.